point out that you did the complete Scott Joplin recordings for RCA back in '75, I think we figured.
Yeah, and it was not easy. There were many sessions involved. It must have been easily a dozen, maybe more.
But you did
one
half an album,
yeah.
one side. It's just improvisations.
Well,
I
think that came about just at the ends of having taken a couple of takes on one of the Joplin pieces, and then with no planning, sat down and tried to see what would come out of improv. And we used those, we put them all together on one side of that collection. I wish that thing were reissued.
Yeah.
RCA never put it out as an LP.
Or a CD.
A CD, I beg your pardon.
Yeah,
although they did do a funny thing where they used some of the selections, not the improvs, by me, and some other selections by James Levine, no less. And that's one of the lesser known albums that's around still.
I noticed that, I mean, you've studied almost every significant ragtime and jazz performer that there is. And of course, you've also explored all other aspects of popular music. You made a number of albums, I think on, what was it, Grand Award and Command, where you did an album of Brazilian music, another of Spanish music, another of I mean, all sorts of things that were recorded in glorious high fidelity and stereo, where you covered a myriad of various pop styles from all countries and whatnot. Also some honky-tonk things, which
you like them better than I do.
Oh, well, those were very influential on me as a kid. I was very fond of the Knuckles O'Toole stuff that you did, and the Slugger Ryan stuff where you did as a puppet for what was it, Snarky Parker, the television series every day. One of the things you did. But among the other things that I've noticed over the years that you've taken a real interest in was the Bix Beiderbecke music.
Oh yeah.
And why first of all, were you interested in that particularly? What does that bring to the scene?
Bix has been one of my heroes since, as we mentioned a lot earlier, I was introduced to the records at a very impressionable age by my brother. And Bix is completely, there are at least two Bixes. There's the Bix of the cornet, beautiful improvs that he takes on standard songs of the time. And then there's the other, the impressionistic Ravel sort of Bix. Piano solos that he wrote.
Yeah.
4 or 5 if you include the
Davenport.
Other one. Davenport Blues. You know. Interesting point about that one, In a Mist. Bix wrote it and played it in perfect tempo. More or less like this. Something like that. But I prefer to play it somewhat out of tempo, or at least a lot less aggressively, more like this. He was trying to do two things at once. You can consider other ways of playing it, even though the composer and the pianist played it one way. We can slow it down. We can play it more.
He played it differently than what was written too. What
was
transcribed from Bill
because he
Challis
was an
there.
improviser like the rest of us, and that means you're not absolutely consistent the way it would be published with a repeat sign, but you make some variations in the repeat. Every jazz player does that. But my point is just that I don't think it's wrong. I think it's a very good, interesting idea to play it a little differently, even from the way that the composer might have recorded it in 1928, whatever.
Okay, so you're not a slavish imitator of
No,
any of that stuff, really.
I am not now. There was a point when I thought that was the purpose, but that's not my point now.
Yeah. I have a general question for you, and you're probably in a better position than most to answer this. Do you see that the idea of jazz, and we're talking about improvisation and the spirit of jazz, has really permeated all the rest of popular music? I mean, you had so much to do with all the records and all the rest of that. Did you feel like that?
There's more improvisation now than there used to be in pop music? Is that your question?
Well, just in general, you know, for all because you were right at the center of the recording industry through the 50s and so forth, and doing these various things, and you've seen all aspects of it and so forth. I mean, we're doing this for jazz at Lincoln Center. Do you see the other parts of the various things that you've played and that you've seen? Do you see that as being part of the spirit of jazz and the tradition that in the sense of popular music and all of these other things that you've done?
Take this example. Maybe this is part of your answer. When Paul Whiteman and his very pretentious orchestra played a tune, they rehearsed it and they recorded it, but in each take of the recording, and presumably every time they played it live, Bix would play a different chorus.
Right.
I think that was expected and appreciated. It wasn't that you must play this because that's the way the masters have always done it. It was understood that it was up to Bix and a couple of the other soloists who were so favored to do their thing. And in a way, I've thought about this, it's a very American thing. It's a very democratic thing. Here's a whole big organization, and at a certain point, everybody agrees that another person should step out and be the star and make up his own version for at least 20 seconds. I don't know where else you'd find that, except possibly, and I don't know much about this, maybe in gypsy bands from which Django Reinhardt emerged, and maybe other folk music, which I'm kind of ignorant about. But it strikes me as being something very American to do this, to entrust a tremendous enterprise to the unpredictability of an improvising soloist from time to time. So to go back to your original question, yes, I do think that we trust and we are interested in improvisation more than in the past. I think it's something now that people study, because it's true that not everything that you play is worthy. You do have, it's a good idea to have certain fundamentals in mind. Even if you're improvising, you have to know how certain things are liable to come out, and then you can be pleasantly surprised from time to time when it leads in a different direction. But you have to have some instruction from somebody somewhere along the line, or else it won't make sense in a social sense.